Hello, this is Andrea for the Learning Bear Podcast, your resource for wild professional development. Today we will be discussing biodiversity and its relationship with different species. We will also discuss its importance for species survival. This will include the defining of the following terms. The first word we need to talk about is adaptation. I talk about it a lot, but it's really important, so we're going to talk about it again. An adaptation is anything that benefits a species. It can be the giraffe's long neck. It can be the owls that have fringed feathers so they can fly quietly in the night. Anything that benefits a species and promotes survival is an adaptation. The next word is biodiversity. Biodiversity, when you break it down, just means variety of life. The greater biodiversity you have, the more healthy and productive your ecosystem or your species is going to be. Then we have natural selection. Natural selection really relates to biodiversity and adaptation. When a species, like, say, the black-footed ferret, has all of the appropriate adaptations, all of the traits that it could possibly have to survive, it is going to be naturally selected to live. And that only happens when there's enough biodiversity, meaning a large enough gene pool that ferret can get all of the traits it needs in order to survive. You could have 10 traits that would be great for a ferret to have, and if they have all 10 of them, then they're probably going to survive and procreate. But if they only have 5 of them, well, then nature is going to say, you're not going to survive, and that happens, unfortunately. Then we have bottleneck. Bottleneck is a metaphorical term mentioning the idea of the spout on a bottle and how the flow of a liquid slows down a lot because that spout is so small. And we're going to talk about all of this stuff in more detail in a bit, so hold on. Why is diversity so important? When I teach this to students, I very often get these glazed eyes and they just completely zone out because they don't really understand how much a species requires diversity. It's really important for an ecosystem, just a simple forest, even just your yard, to have diversity so that it's healthy and it's more productive. A diverse ecosystem has more food choices for way more species, and diversity is also associated with more resilient ecosystems, meaning they can handle life's struggles better, like fires, hurricanes, volcanoes, pollution, climate change, and so forth. Think about some of the strong people in your life that have dealt with these crazy situations. I have lived through tornadoes, I've lived through blizzards, I've lived through flooding, I've lived through hurricanes. I haven't lived with volcanoes, and I'm okay with that. But I feel like I have more skills related to survival because I've been put in these situations. And that makes me a healthier person. A lot of times when I talk about diversity or when I think of diversity, I typically only think of ecosystems like a wetland or a rainforest or an ocean, but it's also really important within a population. Here, diversity means that there are enough participants in a species to continue to produce unique offspring. Okay? When there are fewer members of a population, meaning you only have 5 butterflies instead of 10,000 butterflies, there are fewer and fewer choices for mating, and then the problems start happening. And this is where I like to talk about Harry Potter. Bear with me on this. In Harry Potter, there's 3 types, so-called people, that you see in the wizarding world. Purebloods, mudbloods, and half-bloods. Purebloods are those that have a really small gene pool. They only breed with people that have only ever had a magical heritage ever. And that really limits you. And it can cause problems. Then there's mudbloods, which are people that come from muggle-born, non-magical parents. And that is a much wider gene pool than the purebloods. There's much more to pull from in that scenario. Then we have half-bloods, which take the purity of a pureblood and they mix it with the diversity of a mudblood, and they make this new sort of person that, again, is more resilient, has more genetic diversity, and will be more healthy. What you should take away from this is that a lack of diversity causes a bottleneck. One example is the black-footed ferret, which I alluded to earlier. For a variety of human-related reasons, the population of this animal greatly decreased. Thankfully, because of some other humans, they intervened and haven't been able to rehabilitate the ferret and boost their population. To explain this idea, let's find a bottle in your house. Observe the bottle. Notice how the bulk of it's quite wide and will hold a significant amount of liquid, or whatever substance you put in your bottles. But also notice how the end, where the spout is quite smaller than the bulk of the bottle. The flow is slowed down dramatically because of this smaller size. The same is true for genes. When there are plenty of genes available, the metaphorical spout will be larger, allowing for as much genetic diversity as possible. When the spout is smaller, there is much less chance that all of the necessary traits for survival will be available in the offspring. This is basically the difference between a big old pickle jar and a ketchup bottle. Okay? Some pickle jars, you can fit your whole arm in the pickle jar. Ketchup bottles, you're lucky if you can get your finger in. That's the difference. Ketchup bottles have that bottleneck where there's not a lot of genetic diversity, so not a lot is going to come out at one time. Pickle jars, you can grab 4 or 5 pickles all at once. In some jars, you have greater diversity within a pickle jar versus a ketchup bottle. I know it's silly. I apologize for all these silly examples, but I think they make sense. Here's another example for you. If a person can only eat, say, French fries, hamburgers, and soda, their food options are very limited. Therefore, if the establishments where they receive these food are gone or are no longer attainable in another way, like the price is going up so they can't afford it or they don't have transportation to get them there, that person is going to struggle. However, if a person likes to cook at home, eats a wider range of foods, and can also consider a restaurant as an option, that person is more likely to survive. I know this is kind of a stretch. I understand that. But when I lived in a smaller town and the McDonald's was going to be demolished for a new one, people were freaking out about not being able to get their sweet tea. And I don't personally understand this because I think sweet tea is gross. And I'm sure I will get hate about that, but I don't care. I don't like sweet tea. But these people were sincerely concerned about where they were going to get their sweet tea in these magical styrofoam cups. McDonald's had to give them a poster that says, this is when we're closing, this is when we reopen, and these are the places that you can get sweet tea. Some of them were McDonald's and some of them weren't. The McDonald's alternatives, like another McDonald's in another town, was not a viable solution for them because they didn't have the transportation to get them there. It's a pretty poor city, and going 10, 15, 20 miles away to another McDonald's to get this precious sweet tea was not an option. So these people struggled. And I know it's silly. I understand the silliness of this example, but think about if you or someone you know is addicted to coffee. And some of the people I know that are addicted to coffee, if they don't have their coffee before they start talking to people, they're crabby. Or they'll get a headache, which will make them crabby. So it's silly, but it's also relevant. So now I would like to do a small demonstration for you to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about here with these jars and bottles. So I have taken approximately 1 cup of beads, pony beads, pictured here. Now you're going to see a short example of me pouring the beads, cup of beads, which is now in a jar, into the cup again. See how nice it flows? Now I've taken that same cup of beads and I've put them into a bottle. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is an act of love because it's really hard to get those beads in that daggone bottle. So you're welcome. Now you're going to see me struggle to get all the beads from the jar into the cup. Strictly on timing, it took me 11 seconds to dump the beads from the pint jar into the cup. It took me 19 seconds to get from the maple syrup bottle into the cup. that wraps it up for our Bottleneck Genes discussion. There is an activity from Project Wild that you should definitely check out. And if you want more information about it, please let me know and I'd be happy to share it with you. But for today, we're just going to leave it with that mind-blowing demonstration that I did for you. I hope you have a great day. Please subscribe, share, and follow my channel. I also have a podcast available on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Music, YouTube, and Buzzsprout. If you would like to help me out by sharing it and supporting it monetarily, that would be fantastic. Again, you can suggest content or email me with any questions at learningbarrierpodcast@gmail.com.